So, okay, cool. Recording is in progress. So again, hi everyone. I will start based on the number of people here. So if your partners didn't join yet, just tell them to come. Otherwise, the recording is always available. So thank you everyone for coming. Okay, let's start by sharing a screen. So we'll hope you won't only hear me, but also see a presentation. Okay, cool. I assume you can see it. And let me open the chat just to have it here. Amazing. Okay, so thank you for coming. Let's do a quick intro. So, hi, I'm Anna. I see some familiar names, so I know some people here and you know me. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm a DCA in Glasgow this year. I'm from the Technion Debate Society, and I'm their proud coach. They won the nationals yesterday, so we're very happy about that. And I've been around debating for, I don't know, 9 years, I think. My first Euros was Vienna UDC in 2015. So yes, I've been doing this for a while. I'm mostly coaching and judging these days. And now I guess that's enough about me. So let's do a more general intro. So first of all, just to note, feel free to use the chat to ask questions. I will, after each section, I will address them. So you don't have to wait for the end of this session for with these. Just write them in the chat, and whenever I'm like done with a specific subtopic, I will address those. Otherwise, you can also raise your hands. I'm not sure I will be able to see this for the entirety of the session because, I'm sharing a screen and I'm looking at the chat, so that would be a bit harder, but I'll try to do that as well. And, if you have something so important that you can't hold it, you can feel free to interrupt, but just make sure you don't do it every 5 seconds, right? So in terms of the session itself, so we will be talking today about self-improvement, about drills, about how you can use your time efficiently to improve in debating and judging as well. So I'll try to cover both of these. Most of it will touch more on debating, less than judging in terms of just how I will allocate my time, but judging will be there as well. A few things to note. So this is obviously more relevant for competitive debaters, for people who are willing to invest a lot of time in improvement. So and I'm a strong believer in saying that if you dedicate a lot of time, then you will improve more. If you dedicate less time, you will improve less. So there's no magic tricks here today in order for you to just improve in a glance, in a blink, and be better tomorrow. This is more about how can you use your time to work gradually, but to reach a better improvement with time. So with that being said, I think, first of all, I will give you different ways to look on improvement and different drills to do. And you should know that those things are subjective to a degree, because obviously each and one of us has different starting point. We have different issues, different struggles when we're debating, and also different approaches work differently for each of us. So with that being said, just know that that some of the drills might work amazingly for some of you, even for your debate partner, for example. And then for you, other things will work better, or some things won't work at all. This is entirely okay. This is how we are built, right? Then again, each and one of the drills that we are going to talk about, I don't think that you should do once. I think you should do a couple of times. I think you should work on through weeks, even maybe through months, in order to reach actual substantial change. And doing it once doesn't mean that something doesn't work. So you can't expect results at once. You can't expect them without actually investing the hard work. Then hand in hand with that, we will have a session about this as well in this amazing training academy. But you should keep in mind a few things about your mental health, right? So don't stretch yourself too much, don't overdo practices, don't overdo training to an extent, because you know, keep yourself healthy. And then lastly, I guess, remember that we can't be perfect all the time, that you should look for improvement that is small and gradual, but you can't expect that if, you know, you work on rebuttals, then after you worked for 2 months on rebuttals, your rebuttals will be perfect for the entirety of your life. Doesn't work like this. You still will mess up sometimes. Some of us still, even after we win amazing competitions, still have bad rounds. It's still very much dependent on the specific day, on the specific motion, on how you specifically acted on this again in this round. So remember that you sometimes you can go backwards in your training, regretfully, or sometimes you can do bad even if you're worked on something, and don't let it like bring you down, and don't let it disappoint you or discourage you from continuing to do the hard work. Okay, so that was a bit of just introduction, some holistic nice stuff for you to keep note. Then from here, how this will go is that I divided the this session to specific types of drills and things to do to self-improve that I will cover in different sections. At the end, we will have some general notes, and if we will be left some time, then we'll try to perhaps do a small practice of one of those things together. And obviously you will have time for questions, but again, also feel free to ask questions during the in the chat during those things, during like the session itself. Don't wait for the end. Okay, so then I will start with the most obvious thing, which is debate rounds. So obviously, all of you know that in order to improve, we need to debate, right? And with that being said, I do think that doing a debate round, like an entire round, 8 people debating with a chair, getting feedback is the most time-consumed stuff that you can do in order to practice. But it's also the most real thing, right? So it's exactly what you will do in a competition, presumably. It simulates the prep time, the positions, the rankings, everything to quite exact points. So I do think that that it's, like I said, takes a lot of time for you. I don't think that it's something that you should not do. I think it's something you should do a lot, right? But I do think that sometimes we go into this routine when we're just doing as much rounds as we can in order to prep for important comp, or in order to prep for a specific thing, and we don't necessarily do it effectively. So I'll try to cover in this session how you should use all of those debate rounds that you are doing, but trying to do them with as much focus on improvement as you can. Okay, so then the first thing is obviously get feedback, right? So don't do a round without actually getting feedback on that. And when I'm saying get a feedback, I mean not just listen to the OA. Approach your chair, approach your judge, and ask them for individual feedback. Now, a lot of times you can do it after rounds, and I know that some of us are feeling a bit more like timid, or a bit more uncomfortable reaching out to chairs because we are not friends on Facebook, or because Discord is not a very convenient platform, or stuff like that. Ignore it, guys. Send them a message. I'm getting tons of messages after every competition from people I never knew, or for people I just met, and it's very much okay to ask for feedback. I would also stress that it's perhaps even a bit better to ask for feedback after the round or after the comp, because sometimes during the comps, your chairs, like during the comp, or even during the after the specific practice, your chairs are a bit busy. We all have schedules. We kind of planned to do the round or the comp for a specific amount of hours, and then we want to do some stuff. So try to ask for feedback individually afterwards. ask for it in a nice way, obviously, don't like don't feel stressed if don't feel bad if the chair doesn't answer you, but you can always gently remind them that they're still like, hey, still didn't get some feedback. Maybe if you have a few minutes tomorrow, you can kindly send it to me, stuff like that. Most of the judges I know will answer you and will send you and will like take a few minutes to send you some recorded message with feedback or some written stuff. Then I think the next thing to note here is not only that you should get feedback, but you should sometimes focus on asking specific stuff. And this is, I think, very important, because a lot of times we just ask the chair for, well, how can I do better? Or what do you think? Or can you give me just general feedback? And sometimes it's okay, right? Sometimes it works and the chair gives us amazing stuff and we're very happy. But the thing is that when we want to work systematically on stuff, we should prioritize that. And what do I mean by that? So first of all, if you are working on a specific thing right now, we will talk a bit later on how to do this, but if you are, you know that you are struggling with framing, or you know that you're struggling with analysis, or whatever, you know that you're struggling with style, or you're not clear enough when you're talking, ask specifically about that. Always, and I don't mean ask just about that, try to ask for general feedback, but then also, what do you think about my rebuttals? But how would you, and you can even and it depends on you, on like how would you like to receive your feedback. But if you want it very, like, if you want to understand your improvement in a better way, you can even ask for a judge to say, like, how would you rank my rebuttal from 1 to 5, for example. Then you can track your improvement of rebuttal. So always try to also ask about the specific stuff that you are working right now, in order to track your improvement, in order to note if you are actually doing better with this specific stuff or worse. So then, a few more things that I think you should focus on when you're asking your chair. And this is also if obviously if the chair has time, and obviously very relevant in like home practices with your coach or your friends who are judging, or when you have like specifically ask a judge to help you practice stuff like this. This is where you even can feel even more comfortable, right? So one of the things that you should always try to ask is, how would your judge is how to get at least one rank up, right? So a lot of times we can't necessarily win the room with the material that we provided, or we don't necessarily know the exact thing that we could have run or could improve, stuff like that. But to ask how could you specifically move one rank up, a lot of times, first of all, helps you to read the room a little better and show you what you could have done exactly strategically in order to get from a third to a second, from a second to a first, all those sorts of stuff. The amount of things to do that is also a lot of times smaller, right? So you don't need to improve largely to get from the fourth to the first. You just need a lot of times a little bump. And understanding this little bump helps you understand strategy better, and specifically strategy that you kind of missed when you debated this round. So it's not like reading a room from a zero or learning strategy from scratch. Is about the thing that you already understood, already did, but just how to improve on it a bit. Then I guess the second thing that you should ask, which is kind of similar, is that how to get better in a specific stuff that the chair told you were worse. So a lot of time you were bad, right? So a lot of times the chair will tell you in the feedback, well, your engagement wasn't good. Okay, thank you very much. How can I improve specifically my engagement in this round? And this is where the chair can give you a weighing that you could have given to the other teams, or perhaps give you some analysis, or perhaps, again, talk to you more about strategy. The rationale is very similar to what I just said about how to get one rank up. It sort of allows you to work with stuff that you already have. And a lot of times it helps you understand things better, because it, again, works on something that you already did, but show you how to improve it just a bit. Then the third thing that you can probably ask a chair is, what would they do, right? What would have they run if they think your extension wasn't good? What would have they run in this motion? If they think your engagement wasn't good, what would have they do? This is obviously very much useful to ask when you have like amazing chairs who are amazing debaters, one major stuff like that. So people always have interesting ideas, but it also gives you sometimes, and specifically if you struggle with that, a sort of broader understanding. So sometimes there are extensions that you wouldn't have thought about, or sometimes you are kind of were focused on a very practical thing, and your entire room perhaps were focused on specific clashes, specific cases, and then the chair can say something about the round that is so different from what you would have expected or thought of, that will kind of help you to see another way into the debate. Then the fourth thing is a bit more practical, and it has two angles. So first of all, what should you cut from your speech? Because presumably a lot of times the chair tells you should improve this, but we only have 7 minutes, right? So you should try to understand what you could have cut from your speech in order to prioritize all the additions that the chair tells you to have, because you can't do it all, right? So you want to understand what to cut from your speech. The other side of that coin is what to keep. So you want to make sure to know what were the things that you shouldn't cut from your speech, what were the things that were very important. And this is kind of an important note to focus on for a second, because a lot of times we are very focused on what to improve. We are very focused on how we could have been better. And a lot of times the feedback that we get is also very much focused on, okay, this was a bad engagement, or this point lacked analysis, but it doesn't really show you what were the things that you should preserve or keep in your speech. So it's very important to also note what were the best things that was there, what I should keep. It's also kind of very helpful mentally, right? So in order for you to actually understand that there are some things that you're doing in a good way, in order for you to get a better feeling about your speech. So understanding what you're doing good is very much helpful when you're both for your mental stuff, both in order to prioritize your speech and also to understand your improvement, what you should work on. Then lastly, I will say, if you had a panel and not only chair. So a lot of times and I won't tell you go to every one of the wings and ask everyone, because this is a lot of time consuming, because not everyone will answer. So kind of like, obviously, if you can do it, do it. But if there was a panel, try to ask the chair which one of the wings you should approach for feedback. Because sometimes, specifically during the panel, one of the wings credits you less. And there was a discussion where the wings thought that your, engagement was poor, or the wings kind of didn't understand some of the logic on in your point. And a lot of times the chair will reflect it, but it's still helpful to get it from the specific person, because then the specific person will be able to tell you why they weren't able to follow you. And I think this is very important, because because like we all come from different circuits, different societies, we have different language barriers, and we have different prioritization of how we run cases, how we do cases, different debate styles, all those sorts of things. And when you're prepping for majors, and specifically also when you're prepping for Euros or Worlds and international comp, you want to make sure that you're approachable for a variety of judges, for people who understand debate differently, who know different styles, who are focused on different things. So obviously, there's a judging manual, and we should all judge in a specific, in a like similar way. But also there are differences between different people, and you want to try to note that, or at least I would say you would want to try to track where is if there is a consistent weakness in with a certain type of judges, or with certain type of circuits, or with certain type of motions. So you're always trying to look for consistency with those sorts of things, and understanding if you're consistently doing something in a good way, or something that you can improve on. So this is, I guess, the most important things that I would say about how to get feedback and what to ask for. Then the next thing to note here is that you obviously want to, when you do debate rounds, when you do comps, you want to debate with your partner, right? So if you have a consistent partner, someone who you're going to UDC with, to majors, etc., you want to debate for them. But you should always also try to, first of all, debate with other people as well. And this is something that I kind of think that helps you a lot, because a lot of times when you debate with, and obviously I'm not talking for prep for Euros 1 month from Euros, right? So we're talking for a bit of a more long term now. If you have half a year before majors, you want to debate with not only with your partner, even if you're sure you're going to Euros together, you want to debate with some other people in order to show if you see if those people kind of enlighten you with new stuff that they know. Maybe you want to debate with some like older debaters, more experienced ones, not just older by age, right? So maybe you want to like learn something from what they know, or maybe you want to try and see what they focus on with, when they debate, because a lot of times, and you learn a lot simply by doing prep with other people, and simply by kind of working together with them, you learn new ideas, you learn new perspectives, new cases, all those sorts of things. And this is also good in order to, like, shake and stuff a bit more when you're stuck with the same person. Even if you love this person, you love your partner, you're still kind of stuck with them for a lot of times. And a lot of times you kind of have this then tunnel view of how, and this specific template of how you work. You do prep in a certain way, you run cases in a certain way, and you become a bit more stuck on this thing. And a lot of times it's stuck in a good way, because you have something, it's working, you're happy about it, you're doing good. But in order to sometimes break it up a bit or learn how to improve it by bit, you would want to like switch a partner for 1 round, 2 rounds, see if things work differently in a good way, try to then come back with those things and implement them on your work with your partner. Then the important thing to note here is that when you're debating with other people, you should also ask them for feedback afterwards. Now, obviously your partner a lot of times will give you very valuable feedback, but also people that you're not kind of used to debate with, right? So, and the kind of important thing here is that they know your case, like your partner, the one that you're debating with in this round, know the case that you want to run from the beginning. Like you prepped it during the 15 minutes. They know what you want to say to a very large extent. They also have the same information that you had prior to your speech, right? So they heard the same debate. They presumably you kind of consulted about rebuttals, consulted about strategy, etc. So then when your partner is looking at what your speech ended up to be, they kind of have very similar information to what you had. So a very, very similar starting point to what you had, the most similar one. And this is where a lot of times their feedback right after your speech or right after the round is kind of valuable, because it probably means that you could have implemented that most easily, because they had a very similar idea to both your case, both the debate, all the things that you discussed. So and they also can exclusively understand what gaps there were from what you discussed during the prep to what actually happened during the debate. So this is something that the chair won't know, for example, and this is something that other people, panelists won't know. But your partner will know if you had some problems to follow during prep, or some problems with perhaps writing down something that was discussed, or something, or like some problem with the order of things or prioritization of things, because again, they discussed it with you during prep. They know that you could have done it. Now, a note here, like be willing to receive feedback, because a lot of times it's also kind of harder to receive feedback from your debate partner. They're not supposed to be your judge to an extent. There are a lot of times like this. It's a very delicate relationship, right? So don't be willing to accept this feedback and understand that it's coming from a loving place where they want you to improve and you both as a debate couple, right, or debate partnership to become better. But if you see that it's harming you, if you see that it can't be done in a constructive way, then obviously don't do it. Another thing to do to note here is that you would presumably want to, if you have the time again, so talking like half year before a major, you would want to switch up roles with your partners sometimes during the debate round. So if you are a whip and your partner is an extension speaker, you would want sometimes to switch up. Same goes for first half debates, right? Sometimes you do PM, sometimes they do PM. Again, not 1 month before EUDC. Now you kind of should already know your specific roles. If you don't, still obviously still do it. Obviously still, not everything is lost. You still have some time, but if you have a lot of time to prep, you would want to do this switch up sometimes in order for, first of all, understand a bit more what your partner is struggling with. So if they so when you kind of do the same thing, you do the same role, you have this better understanding, but moreover and more importantly, you understand better how to help them afterwards. So if you are an extension speaker and your partner is a whip, and then you do whip a few times, you understand more how to help with weighings. You understand more how to help with engagement, for example, and you can do it in a more structured way, in a way that will kind of help you both as a team more. So try to do this switching up a bit if you have the time again, in order to become better as a team. Just let me see the chat. The chat, sorry. Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, then let's see. Then what do we have next? Okay, so then during the round itself. So it's important to note here that during the round, and you kind of want to work every time on only a few specific things. So again, and we're not talking here about during a major, we're not talking even about during a debate competition. I'm talking specifically during practice rounds, during spars, during your like home rounds, your weekly practices, stuff like that. So you would want to focus your work in this specific round on one or two things. You would want to to actually write down on your pages before the debate that you're working on engagement, or you're working on analysis, or you're working on, I don't know, strategy, whatever you're working on, write it down. Focus on that. Why am I saying this? Because sometimes, and I honestly think that sometimes it's okay for us to deprioritize everything else during this practice. So it's okay for, if you're working on engagement, you can even deprioritize running a case. You can do an entire speech that is solely focused on engagement. Yes, sure, you might get a fourth in this round, but it is a practice. It's not really crucial for you to get the first here. It's crucial for you to improve on this specific stuff. So you might ditch your extension, or you might or the opposite way, right? If you're working on specifically on wings, or specifically on analysis, you might not do rebuttals at all. So try to see what you're working on, and sometimes try to prioritize it over everything else. So a good way to like a good strategy for practice is trying to see if you can do the entirety of those 7 minutes of speech only on this thing. And then because sometimes if you do 7 minutes of rebuttals, first of all, you will have more feedback on this specific thing, and a lot of times the chair will be able to say to you which of the rebuttals were better, which of them were worse, and you will be able to understand, oh, okay, so when I'm doing this specific thing, then my rebuttals are actually becoming a bit better. When I'm thinking about this, then my rebuttals are again a bit worse. So this is why I should do it less, because then it gives you sort of a larger sample of those things to get feedback on. So you can use the entire 7 minutes to work on those things. It's okay to get a fourth in a practice. Obviously, if you feel really bad about it, or if it's like a very important practice for you, then don't do it. But what you can do is, again, if you have the time, is focus on those specific things and then gradually try to sort of go back to a normal debating where you don't give it the entire 7 minutes, where you perhaps give it only 3 minutes or only 2 minutes, and then gradually just work the normal way when you don't do a special prioritization for it, but it's still written down on your page. And then you will sort of make this habit, you kind of build this habit of actually doing those things that are written down. Then I would say, like I told you, write it down, work on 1 or 2 things at a time, not more, and note where to change those. So if you're working for 1 month on a specific thing, and you should probably already see some progress. If you're not seeing progress, you should change the way that you're working on, or you should switch around, because it probably won't help if you, and again, I'm saying 1 month, where I assume you do at least like 4 or 6 rounds of debate a week. If you're doing just 1 or 2 debate rounds a week, then obviously you should you should do more when you're prepping for majors, to be honest. But if you don't have the time, and we always work, study, stuff like that, so then you can take larger chunks of time to work on stuff. So then note when to switch those things up. Note that you don't stuck too long working on a specific things, and sometimes even if you think that you are still not perfect about something, switch, try to work on, if you worked on it for a long time, perhaps ditch it, because sometimes some of us just have things that we're weaker on, so some of us just won't get amazing at some specific stuff, but you also don't want to get too frustrated. So you don't want to spend 2 months working on one specific thing, get stuck on it without a ways to improve. Obviously, this is the time to reach for some help from your coach, from someone who is more experienced, in order to actually flag out, hi, I'm stuck, I can't continue like this. But also perhaps switching things up and focusing on something else will help you better at this point, other than just like, going with your head into the wall about one specific thing. So this is what you are sort of doing during the round. You're focusing on one stuff. It's always written down. You're working on it in a way where you're trying to implement all the specific feedbacks that we talked in the beginning of the session about. After the round, then, so obviously all the stuff, all the things that we said about get feedback, write down the feedback. What should you ask for is happening after the round. But another thing that is, I think, very important to do after the round, and this is something that you can do without your partner, something that you can do on your own, is that try to think about the speech that you gave, like specifically the speech that you actually did during the round, and try to think in your head, how can you tweak it to make it better? So don't build an entirely new speech, because building an entirely new speech is something that that is presumably it obviously good, but it's not something that you could have done with the setup, with the set of mind, with the skills that you had in the beginning of the round. But try to think how you could have taken the speech that you had and improve some small stuff in order to get it better, in order to get a few more speaks, in order to get 1 rank up, in order to perhaps tweak just a few lines. Try to change some specific rebuttals, or add 1 weighing, or try to think how you can make this specific analysis clearer, or have a better, how to say it, not underline, bottom line. And this is something that you can do on your way home, in your head, while you're driving or while you're taking a bus, whatever. Something you can do before your sleep. Something you can do the day afterwards, during work, when you're spaced out, whatever. So shouldn't take a lot of time. But working in your head on this specific speech, allows you to then implement those stuff easily afterwards, because you are presumably thinking about the stuff that you got during feedback. You're presumably thinking about the stuff that you are a bit weaker on or need improvement in the moment, and you implement them with the skills that you already have. So it's not like you're doing an entirely new round where you have a different motion and different judges and different teams, and all the challenge and all like the challenge become different, right? When it's a different motion, different position, it sort of mixes things up, and it's much harder to try and implement the specific thing, the specific feedback in an entirely different settings. But when you're trying to implement the feedback in the specific setting where you got it, so presumably the same speech, it's easier for you to understand how you would actually do it. And it's also important because a lot of times what the chair is saying to you in terms of like how to do it better, you a lot of times like understand it conceptually, but you're not always sure, or you don't always know if you can actually implement it. And this is where thinking about your speech specifically and trying to implement those stuff would help, because presumably, yeah, you understand that you need a weighing in order to win in order to weigh your case. So you understand that you need better engagement, but how? What is the specific weighing? What is the specific engagement with the material that you already have? So then trying to play about this in your head is very much helpful, and very much helps you to understand the feedback, and then build the habit of implementing it in the rounds afterwards, because you already sort of started the work even before the next practice. You're already working on improving on those specific things. Another thing to note here is that don't be too obsessive, right? So know when to let go, of the round that you sucked in before, or that you got a fourth. Know when to sort of prioritize your having just a fun evening after the round and drinking a beer with your friends, and not consistently just speaking about it or thinking about it. So it's always a balance of, yes, I want to think in my head how to improve my speech, but I also want to know when it becomes too obsessive, too harmful for me, and sort of let go and continue to the next round and start anew, right? So yeah, this is most of the things that I think is very useful to do, again, when you practice specifically on debate rounds. So when it's the same thing as competition, but a debate round in a practice, in a spar, stuff like that. A few things for judges. So when you are practicing to be a better judge, when you're practicing to be a major judge. Like a judge in majors. So first of all, know that a lot of the stuff that we just discussed about feedback, about writing down the specific stuff to work on, about how to ask, what to ask, you can do all of those things as well. As a wing, always ask for feedback. If you're not sure, like if you want to get feedback as a chair, you can always ask for feedback as a chair as well. Ask for feedback from your panelists, if you're a wing, from your chairs, from your other wings. If you're a chair, from your wings. You can always ask the teams for feedback if you feel comfortable with. So feedback goes not only for debaters, feedback goes for judges as well. As a judge, you can also, after the not in all competitions, but most of the competitions will be willing to give you anonymized feedback after the comp. So the feedback that teams actually submitted about you, they will redact it in terms of like not telling you who submitted what, but they will give you general points, or the CA team will give you general points of feedback. And here, I think also what's important to note is that if you are a wing, you want to ask feedback not only about like how should I judge better, or how should I track better, but a lot of times you also want to focus on how should you improve in the discussion, right? Because the discussion is the thing that you are being ranked on a lot of times. So sometimes it's not just how you track debate and how you judge the actual debate, but how you express yourself during the panel that needs improvement. So as a judge, you should try to understand and to note if the difficulty that you are facing is actually while judging the debate, or is it during the panel discussion? Because those are two sort of a bit of a different stuff. It's sort of like it's sort of similar for a debater to understand if the challenge that they're facing is the case that they have written down or on their pages and that they can't deliver it in a good way, or if they don't have the case to begin with, right? So this is the two distinctions there. As a wing, even if you're not chairing, you can afterwards, after the round, kind of practice giving OA, right? You can think about how you would have structured the OA for the round. You can, if you have some teams that you know or that you know in the room, you can always ask them, hey guys, can I kind of practice giving OA on you? Because a lot of times, and this is something important to note, a lot of times you are winging for a lot of times, and then you get this jump to a chair. And the first few times that you need to give OA to a room of people is very stressful, right? This is something that you didn't work on a lot, didn't have the opportunity to do. This is where all the teams are judging you. One of them gets the fourth. So it's always hard to explain it. It's always, you always kind of, and if you're not, and if you're like a very confident person, then don't listen to me, be confident, it's okay. But most of us are kind of a bit more like, we have some difficulties with those things in the first time. So try to practice giving OA, even if you're not sharing. In your like home practices, in your societies, ask your whoever do the allocation sometimes to be chair, even if you're not a chair judge, ask them to sometimes perhaps be a chair, or sometimes to ask if you can wing, and then the chair for the chair to listen to your OA, even if you don't think that you're ready. So first of all, again, because you need to practice giving OA specifically, this is something that you would be judged on and receive feedback on. But moreover, when you are trying to build an entire justification for the round, a lot of times it kind of helps you to understand better. It's because it's much more holistic and comprehensive than just doing two comparisons. And a lot of times when you are kind of forced with finding the reasons and finding the justifications for the teams, it forces you as a wing to come up with the stuff that you might not come up with before. So this is why I would say always try to, if you're working on how to improve as a judge, try to give OA. And lastly, and I think I already said it, but I'm not sure. Still write down on your pages what to work on, and try to see if you can work on those specific things during the round. So if you know that you are perhaps not very good in engagement during the panel, so you're not talking with the other wings, you're only kind of talking with engagement in the panel is where sometimes the one of the wings says something, like they saying, I think CG won for 1, 2, 3 reasons, and a lot of times the other wing or you won't necessarily engage with them, but just give like parallel reasons to why all won, if this is your stance. So a lot of times you would want to work on how to respond to the other panelists during the round. So not only provide during this panel, not only provide your reasons, but try to also respond to their reasons. And this is something that you perhaps want to work on, or perhaps you would want to work on noting engagement, or perhaps you would want to note being specific. Perhaps it's even stuff like don't talk too much or something like that. So a lot of times those are easier stuff that we are kind of losing track when we don't have them before our eyes. So try to also write those stuff down, note when you want to move from them. Same strategy as for debaters. You can work on only those specific things during a panel. So if it's a practice round, not a competition, you can tell to your chair, the thing that I need to improve on is tracking. So please give me feedback on whether I tracked the debate well, and then you will focus your participation in the panel on showing your tracking skills. Again, won't work for a competition where you need to present like a good job on all fronts, but very good in order to prioritize practice. So This is for judges in debate rounds. Before we move to the next thing, do anyone have any questions? Cool. So other than Yael wanting to debate with her coach, we don't have any specific things. Okay, amazing. Then let's move on. The other thing that I think is very, very good for people to improve on is doing prep drills. And let's break this down. So what do I mean by prep drills? So the first kind of prep drill to have is with your partner, like it's just you and your partner, and you're picking a random motion, or not a random motion, but you're picking some sort of motion that you want to work on, and you're doing 15 minutes of prep. Cool. You presumably build build your speeches, and then you do some reflection afterwards. So this is one sort of a prep drill that you can have, and we will talk about pros and cons on each and one of them and how to do them in a second, but just to break down which types do we have. Then we have a prep drill where you can do it just with your partner, or with or by yourself, or with multiple people, where you just break down the motion. So you don't necessarily take 15 minutes, you might take 30 minutes, or you might take whatever time you want, but you want to have this motion and analyze the hell out of it. So this is like another prep drill that you can have. Another kind of prep that you can have is where you're doing prep with your partner, but someone else is watching your prep. So your coach or an experienced debater is watching you during those 15 minutes of prep, and then gives you comments on the specific prep session that you had. And then the fourth kind, I would say, that you can do that would be relevant during this slide is a prep session. Sorry, we talked. It's a prep session that you may doing not with your partner, but with some other debaters. So with your coach, with a more experienced debater, but where you are acting as if you are partners, as if you are debating together. Then how which things are each and one of these is better for? So obviously the prep session where your coach is watching you and your partner, or an experienced debater watches you and your partner, is very good for working on partnerships. So on partnerships, on strategy, and on and specifically on things that you are struggling about during the prep. So for example, it's not always useful to work if you have problems with doing rebuttals, so if you have problems with getting a deeper analysis, this is not always something that is helpful. But if you are having problems with thinking of extensions, or if you have problems with finding the basic case for a debate, or if you have problems that for example, I don't know even what else, but with thinking about the mechanisms or stuff like that. This is where a coach or someone experienced looking at your prep is very useful. Why? Because a lot of times we are doing a prep in a certain way when we are missing something that is important. So we're not thinking about the other side enough, or we're not going too deep on specific questions, or or the other way around, we are going too deep too soon on specific questions, or perhaps we don't listen carefully enough to our partner, or we don't speak enough. So all those sorts of things are very useful for someone else to note. And this is important to do at least, I think, once or twice, I would say even 3 or 4 before a major, because usually nobody sees you doing prep other than your partner. So usually you don't get any feedback on your prep sessions. And a lot of times you don't know if the mistakes that you are afterwards making in a debate are like come to life as soon as your prep session, or is it something that happens only afterwards when you build your speech or when you track the debate? So some mistakes we can eradicate very early in the prep by somebody who doesn't know how, who doesn't like who is not our partner, that would see your prep session and comment on it. Note that it should be someone who knows you, so it should be someone who kind of saw you debated, saw you debated against you, judged you a few times, because you don't because you want them to have some perception of how then your speaking looks like. You don't want to have somebody new entirely who doesn't know you do a prep set like how to say it, like in a perfect situation. If you don't have it, it's still okay. Or someone who is experienced as a coach, because then we see mistakes that are repeating themselves, and we can understand those sorts of things. So you would want someone to look at your prep session. Then doing preps with your partner specifically, like short prep session of 15 minutes repeatedly, is something that is very, it's another like prep drill, which is very useful in terms of time, right? So it's short. You don't need to have 2 hours to do an entire round. You can just do 15 minutes of prep, and then everyone would go their separate ways and think more about some stuff and things like that. But you don't need to clear out a lot of times for that. And it's kind of good to work on specific things that you struggle with, like specific motion types. So if you know that you have problem with actor motions or with economy motions or philosophy motions, whatever. So it gives you this opportunity to work very targetedly and in a quick way on specific things. For motion analysis, so a prep tool that will take motion and analyze it. This is where motion types are, I think, probably the only important thing to note. So this is very good if you're struggling with specific topics or specific motions, whether it's like again, actor analysis, stuff like that, or whether it's econ IR, things like that. So this is where again, analyzing the hell out of emotion would help you, and you would want to do a few of those specific types. So obviously it's not enough to do in order to improve an econ motions to analyze one of those. You want to take a variety of econ motion, one on a fiscal policy, one on a monetary policy, one that is more about IR and econ, one that is more like philosophically talks about economy and approaches there. And you want to have analyze a lot of those things. This is also where it's very helpful to not only work with your partner, but also have someone who is better at those specific stuff. So if you have someone from your society who understands economy really good, you would want to sit presumably with them on those motion types. If they don't have the time, you can always send them the analysis that you made and ask them, hey, maybe you can think about more lines, about more things to say here. So this is where those specific type of drills is helpful. And then I think we had another one. All right, let me just move forward and maybe I will remember the other one. So what is then what is then we covered here? So let's go over the slide now. So who to prep with? So we talked about prepping with partners. We talked about prepping with the last part that I just forgot. Prepping with someone who is not your partner. So this would help to work on specific gaps that you have. Right. So if you know, for example, that you struggle to think about extensions or something like that, or you struggle to think about the other side, like you're not prepared enough with engagement when you enter the round. A lot of times doing 1 or 2 prep sessions with another person who don't have the same problems as you would help you, because then you would see how they do prep in a different way. And then you can try to come back to your partner and implement those sorts of stuff. So then when we're doing prep deals, what are we working on? So we talked about working on specific motions. We can work on specific positions, right? So doing 5-6 prep sessions only on OG. OG has different burdens, right? We need to think about the mechanism in order to, like a model for the debate. We need to think about definitions. We need to think about cases that are more solid or strategies of first half, how to spread out. So all those sort of things are different than what we do in CG when we try to think about what the first house would have drawn, stuff like that. So working on specific positions. Then another thing that you can work on during prep deals is kind of having a path to victory. So like you can work simply on strategy. You can do 15 minutes where you are looking at a motion with your partner and you're not trying to do the usual prep of where you like break it down to different cases and you're trying to understand what you would have run, but you're trying to build this strategy of how am I taking one case and I'm winning with it. So it would presumably mean that you are taking one case and you are doing the framing for it and you are doing the weighings for it and you are thinking how this case specifically interacts with different cases in the debate. This is not something that we always want to do during a regular prep because we don't want to like put all of our eggs in the same basket. We want to think about different cases during a debate because this case might not be left for us or might not be relevant, other sorts of things. But we can do specific preps that are very focused on a like path to victory with one case in order to practice our strategy, in order to practice how can we then implement it during the debate afterwards. Okay, before moving on, I can see we have a question. How useful do you think is it to still give PMs after prep? Is there something specific the second speaker could do during the PM speeches to improve as well? Okay, so I think first of all, it depends on time. So, and this is important here because presumably if you chose to do a prep drill, you chose it because you perhaps don't have the time to do an entire round, right? And this might be something like a bit too banal to say, but you don't want to choose a specific thing like a prep drill where you want to do a quick but efficient job and then stretch it out to last for 1.5 hours, because this will kind of ruin your own expectations and make you deprioritize those sorts of practices. But if you do have the time and if you're willing to do this, then I think so I have this, so first of all, personally, I do think when you can do more, do more. So if you can do a PM speech, or if you can watch a recorded debate round about this specific motion that you just did, or if you can actually do an entire round a day afterwards or something on this prep, sure, do it. I am a big fan of hard work. So if you can do more, do more. How then specifically on how helpful is it? I do think that it helps when you have specific gaps more. So if you are not sure how much you are how successful you are in implementing what you did in prep into your speeches, then it is very important to try and do an actual speech and see how it works out. And this, again, depends on each and one of us subjectively, because some of us are very much sure that what they have on the page is what they will have in their speech. And they don't have any problem visioning and understanding how their speech would look like. Some of us, the gap from what they have on their pages to what they actually have in their speeches is huge. It depends on how we do note taking. It depends on how much we're writing, what is our debate style, etc. So if you're very confident on your notes, on your pages, then you don't have a lot of time to actually do the specific speech afterwards. If you're struggling with or you're not sure, then yeah, it's very important, because then doing the prep is not always as helpful because your pages are presumably not very much reflective of what you would actually do. And the second speaker during your speech should do the same stuff that they do always. I think they should try to note what are you missing from what you were supposed to do. So if they know that you should have had 4 lines of analysis, but you only had 3 ways of analysis, then they should know that. If they know that you have 2 cases to run, but you reach the second case only during your 6 minutes, they should know that. All those sorts of things that your partner should kind of know in regular rounds are also relevant here. And I think, so this is possible, but they should know. What they should do to improve is also, I would say, very similar to what they should do during the round. So a lot of times the second speaker is kind of stuck with trying to understand what you did bad and how can we improve it. So whether there was a gap in analysis, whether there was some point of engagement missing, whether something wasn't clear enough, or one of the points was explained sufficiently well, very analyzed, the second point was rushed. So the second speaker should always kind of understand what is not good, and then make it better, evolve on that, make the analysis that was missing, make the engagement, the rebuttal, the weighing, whatever wasn't there a lot of times. Because presumably, if the first speaker did a perfect job, then the second speaker can just focus on running another case, or focus on just rebutting, just engaging, just weighing. But a lot of times we do need to strengthen the speech that we had, that our first speaker had. The I don't know, third, I think, or fourth thing that the second speaker can do then is try to think of rebuttals. And this is important on two levels. First of all, because presumably the speaker afterwards would actually have rebuttals, and you want to have those rebuttals and rebuildings to begin with. But also you can then think of how you'd simply, even if the rebuttals won't come, a lot of times when you think of rebuttals to your own case, you then think of how you can strengthen your analysis regardless. So this is where you can think of where is our weakest point, and what can I add there in order to make the case stronger. So as a second speaker, you can always try to think of rebuttals and rebuildings, specifically when it's not an actual comp, when it's not an actual debate round, it's just a prep drill, as we discussed here. Thinking of rebuttals, thinking on how we can improve the case would help you to actually improve it. Yeah, this I think is the most important stuff. In this scenario, by the way, the second speaker can also think simply like how they would structure their own speech. So and those are things that that you should think from the prep, right? So as a second speaker, you should be very how to say it, very flexible in your speech. You should not have it finalized during prep, but you still should note that some things should be there from the prep itself. So some weighings you should already have, some lines of some like thinking about the other side, maybe another case, or maybe another like ways of analysis you should already have on your pages. So this is what I think the second speaker can do during those things. Then I think we're jumping to what are we doing after this prep session. So I think to know, so a few things. Obviously, if we did a prep session with somebody else, with our coach, with a more experienced debater, somebody then watched us, then we are receiving feedback. And we're receiving feedback in a very similar way to what we discussed before, that we're trying to make the feedback specific. We're trying to see if there are stuff that are repeating themselves. We're trying to not only ask the coach or the experienced debater how what was wrong, but how to actually improve on it, how to do it better, what would they suggest, etc. And then we can always do, we can always watch, if we're prepping on a recorded round, we can always watch the round. And this is kind of helpful both in terms of like seeing other things that people do, but a lot of times also seeing how a case you would think about being implemented, because probably the analysis won't be the same. Probably they will have some other mechanisms or some other weighings and stuff like that. And you would have seen rebuttals to the case that you didn't think about. So all those sorts of things are very helpful because similarly as what we talked about before, it kind of works on stuff that you already invested in. So you already have the prep session and the speech ready, and you kind of already know what you can do entering those things. And then you're building on a basis that is kind of stronger because you already understand the motion. You already know, like the best, sort of like, maybe not the best, but like the average work that you can do on this motion. Then building on that is a bit easier than doing an entirely new round. And it's easier to also learn those cases when it's on a motion you already worked on, rather than just watching a debate that you didn't think about at all, or watching a debate that you didn't prep. Because when you're watching a debate that you didn't prep, it's harder for you to follow. It's harder for you to remember those stuff. It's harder for you to understand what you can and can't do from what the other speakers are doing. So a lot of times I'm hearing a wonderful case that are being run, but realistically, I know that I probably can't run it. I know that I probably wouldn't have thought about it during prep. This is not something that fits how I'm thinking. This is not something that is in my knowledge. And how to say, something that I know of, or it's not something that is very fits my style, etc. But when you are kind of already prepped for it, you could take specific stuff from those speeches and say, oh, okay, I maybe couldn't have run it like this, but I probably could have this specific example as well, or I probably could have had this specific weighing as well. And then you can do the extra step of trying to think, but why didn't I think about? What can I do in order to think about those things? So if I didn't think about the example, maybe this is because we didn't discuss examples at all, or maybe this is because I was very much focused on one area, like I was only thinking about this debate in Europe and not in other countries, or maybe I was too focused on different stuff, and then I can note it to myself for other rounds. Like, I know I can think of this example, or I know I can think about this weighing. What is the extra step needed for me to think about it? And this is where you can easily then implement it afterwards by simply having it written down on your page. Just write on your page different country, or write it on your page, think about CG, and or like write on your page a weighing that talks about a priority, stuff like that, and you would be like, okay, yeah, those are things that I can do. I just didn't think about them specifically here. This is what I need to do in order to think about them. So those are all stuff we can do after prep. We can obviously also make like a larger discussion, or a more of a prolonged work afterwards. So if we kind of found that the specific motion that we work with, we had problems, or the position that we prepped on, we had problems, or something didn't work, we can have a larger discussion about it. We can kind of build more practices on top of it, stuff like that. So this is something that sometimes is harder for us to do during an entire round, because an entire round has different focuses, many different things, a lot of randomness inside it. A prep drill is more focused for us to then have specific conclusions afterwards. What specifically didn't work, and should we then work more about it or not? So kind of doing a reflection after a prep session and reaching conclusions is important. Lastly, then, prep drills are very important in order to work on partnerships. I think I pronounce it okay. So this is where you're kind of very much, this is where you will be good in understanding what your partner lacks, how your partner could improve. This is where you work specifically on your not engagement, how do you say, communication skills, on how you talk with each other, how you understand each other, how you track each other, how you make each other stronger, where you need to help your partner, where you need their help. All those sorts of things are very much exclusive to prep drills, I think. And a lot of times those are things that we will miss when we're doing actual rounds, because actual rounds are they have more stakes on it. We're more focused on ourselves, we're more focused on the actual debate that will happen afterwards, we're more focused on other teams. A lot of those things come into play. So partnership is something that I think prep deals are very good to work on exclusively. And anybody has questions specifically about prep drills before we're moving to the next step? No. Okay. Then, so not sure how, let me just see how much time we are left with, because I think not much, right? Yeah, not much at all. Okay, I was babbling for too long. Okay then, so we don't, okay, I can, thank you, Jack. Okay, so then I will cover this one much more quickly. Because obviously my time management need improvement, and I promised you that I would work specifically on time management for the rest of my prepping. Okay, so then another way of that we can look at self-improvement is working specifically on knowledge and case files. I will run through it, right? So the first thing is you should read and watch and focus on consuming knowledge that you are lacking on. You should, read The Economist, okay? Everyone talking about The Economist, you need to read it. But then also like try to listen to podcasts or read articles specifically about things that you think that you are lacking. Try to go and find some introduction to econ with 2 pages, not with 200 pages, that you can read in order to understand things a bit better. Watch debates that are focused on the specific, again, topic that you're lacking on, or that you need to build knowledge on. Try to prioritize watching those debates. Try to prioritize watching those cases. When you're building a case file, and this is where we don't have the time to cover all of it because I have a lot of things to say here, but when you're building a topical case file, a few of the most important things to note here is that you want to make it short, you want to make it accessible, and you want to make it very much debate focused. So you don't want to just have 10 pages on Scotland and the history and the economic policies there and whatever, because honestly, you won't be able to use it. You want to have 1-pager, 2-pager of specific stuff like economy, like welfare, like, I don't know, history that you think that are relevant or whatever that you would be able to then implement into the debate. So try to think about past motions and try to see how those motions then affect those specific topic. You can always try to then write a more general case file. This is where I'm moving forwards about a specific about like a political debate where you are analyzing representation versus electability or efficacy or whatever. If you know those are the things that you're struggling with. And the thing to note here is that don't then go and use it in a debate round as it is. Don't just read it out because it won't work. Every round is specific, right? But this is where you can practice your skills. This is where you can practice your analysis. This is where you can think of different ways to do stuff that you didn't do before. For judges, you can do OAs and you can watch a debate or build an OA while by yourself, obviously, by just watching rounds, by just watching comps, all those sorts of things. So this is not just helpful for debaters to watch a debate round in order to learn about new stuff. This is also helpful for judges. And the same thing is important here. As a judge as well, we still have the same problems. We still are having problem with econ debates, or we still have problem with philosophical debates or stuff like this, because, simply because we switch to a judging role doesn't mean that we just now know everything. So try to also see the gaps that you have and watch those debates, focus on these debates specifically. Then last notes, set specific goals. We will not talk during comp. You will have an entire session, I think, on comp, so those will be covered there, I hope. If not, if you have specific questions on what to do during the competition, just reach out to me and I will kind of elaborate on all those things. But some general notes to end this session. track your feedbacks, right? So everything I just said won't work if you don't actually track your feedback. Have a Google Sheet, have a notebook, I don't care, have a toilet paper stuck on a magnet wall somewhere, but note the specific things that you need to work on. So you always want to know what you're working on. You always want to know if those things are repeating themselves. You don't just work on general things without tracking, without setting specific goals. Always ask help if you're stuck. So don't just work for 2 months or even 2 weeks if you think it's too much. It's very subjective. Don't just work on the same thing and feel frustrated and don't and then quit or then move to another thing. If you feel you're stuck, ask for help. Ask for different approaches. Ask your partner, ask your coach, ask another debater. And the last thing is, guys, keep it fun, right? If this is a hobby, this is something that we do because we like it. If we will work too hard, if we would spend too much time eating on ourselves and judging ourselves and trying to make it into a thing that is too hard on ourselves, we will lose the motivation to do it. And we do need to keep it fun. So know when to have a break, know when to have a beer, know when to ditch around, ditch a case, understand that something that you just need to perhaps have a fun round, have a fun motion. Don't work on hard stuff today, but just bring yourself up and make yourself feel better and more motivated will help you in future sessions and will give you the motivation to continue to do the hard work. So remember to also have fun while doing those things. I hope you don't have questions. We don't have the time to practice, but if you do have some questions, this is the time to ask them. If not, then I would not dare to take Jack's time. So I presume you will go to the next session about politics and democracy.